Now, the left is screaming over Trump's announcement that they're looking at 19 cities to send the National Guard to, and they're trying desperately to stop him from cutting down on crime and from deporting illegal aliens. This is from the left-wing news outlet Axios. Trump sending National Guard to Chicago will be trickier than the D.C. Deployment. This is by Justin Kaufman. President Trump, he writes, doubled down on his threat to send the National Guard to Chicago, but local leaders are voicing their doubts about the legality of the move, mostly because they are leftists who will, of course, doubt the legality of any Trump move. The big picture, Axios writes. Trump says he wants to use the military presence in Chicago to fight crime, homelessness, and undocumented immigration, aka mass illegal immigration. But while the home rule laws in Washington, D.C. make it easier to federalize law enforcement, it is unclear if the law supports this in Illinois. What they are saying. We're going to take him to court, says the Governor Pritzker, and of course he's going to because they're leftists. There is no law in the books that allows him to put federalized troops on the streets of Chicago. But there's a disagreement on that. This is from Fox News. I believe it's Greg Jarrett. This is a legal analyst.
Ridden cities. A lot of folks out there probably don't remember. I don't know if you do. I've got a few years on you, but I do remember when Presidents Kennedy and then Johnson sent National Guards into states in order to break up the segregationists. And those governors were not in favor of it, but the president did so anyway and basically was supported by the vast majority of Americans.
That's right. This has happened before. And of course it has to, because when you have rogue governors, rogue mayors, rogue police departments who refuse to enforce the law, the federal government has every right to step in. The federal government, their one duty is to protect the American people. And so when you have corrupt institutions that have gone rogue, which these Democrat states have done with their sanctuary laws, and they're looking the other way at crime, of course the president has the authority to do so.
Yeah, and Eisenhower did it as well.
That's right.
And look, when you are interfering with the enforcement of federal law, as in those instances you named, the president has the authority to call in the National Guard if he fears that citizens are in imminent threat of bodily injury or harm, that things are out of control. Of course he can call in the National Guard. Notify the governor. If the governor resists, the president can do it anyway.
Absolutely. We've seen it before.
That's right. So this guy writing the article and the left that keeps trying to say, oh, he doesn't have the authority. Of course they're going to say it because they are at war with President Trump. But make no mistake, Donald Trump is going to have the authority to do this. We already saw it play out in California, and it will continue on. And it needs to, because the corruption must end. Trump should have actually done this in his first term, but he was too mired in political theater with the constant attempts to get him kicked out of office and so on and so forth. Anyway, so Pritzker is saying that we are going to take him to court. The whole point of the system of state control of local law enforcement and the state militias is as a check against federal abuse of power. This is Paul Gowder, Northwestern University law professor and radical leftist. I added that last part. This has been true since the founding of the United States, and the only alteration to this system of divided power was after the Civil War. Because you had states go completely rogue and try to break off from the United States. Of course, there had to be more controls. Between the lines. Usually, the president and the state's governor are in lockstep to mobilize the National Guard. In this case, Pritzker is against it, but Trump could still federalize state troops, writes Axios, without the governor's approval, which, of course, Donald Trump is going to do at some point. Make no mistake, he will. Yes, but, he writes, the force would be limited to protecting federal assets and federal employees like ICE agents, unless the president invokes the Insurrection Act of 1807, which allows the commander-in-chief to use those troops to quell insurrection or unrest, which likely I could see that happening. Trump says he has the right to mobilize because Chicago is a disaster. They are flaunting the rule of law, and they are allowing the citizens of Chicago to be obliterated. The intrigue Former Mayor Rahm Emanuel argued on CNN Sunday that Trump's deployment threat isn't about crime. No, of course it's not. But it's about supporting anti-immigration efforts in sanctuary cities, which is crime. Of course. All of it is one and the same. What? Fucking. Emanuel is a political hack, of course. He's not stupid. He's not a retard. But anyone listening to him is. What do you think immigration is? Illegal immigration is crime at all times. And then, of course, there's regular crime where citizens are killing each other. The idiot talking about? And there's also the problem that in Chicago, a city ordinance prohibits local police from supporting federal immigration operations, which is a ridiculous law. Federal control over military power is being abused to support a system of due process, free snatch, and grab immigration enforcement against state opposition, Gowder adds. State of play. The National Guard has been deployed during the major moments of civil unrest, but this time Trump is proposing to activate them preemptively, and that's a big shift. It's not preemptive. These governments are in open defiance, and they are trying to keep illegal aliens festering inside of our country, committing endless amounts of crime. This is not preemptive. This is decades late in reaction. Now, in 1968, the Guard was called to quell violence, a clash between demonstrators and law enforcement as protests erupted at the Democratic National Conventions in Chicago. Now, if you were anywhere near the DNC at the United Center last August, you might have seen how federal troop deployment could play out. Chicago police upped the ante with tactical and riot gear, while other federal agents and soldiers secured checkpoints carrying rifles and other military weaponry. Or you could just look to California, where the National Guard and Marines were brought in to end the riots that was happening there in the attempts to stop ICE from deporting. And of course, it immediately derailed the attempts at stopping the Trump administration with their day of rage. The other side. Now, even though violent crime and homicide numbers are sharply falling, which is suspect, by the way, especially now that we know in places like D.C. where they've been corrupting the numbers, including that one that killed 4 people at North River. There have yet been several mass shootings this summer, including one that killed 4 people at a River North nightclub just before the 4th of July. It is still unclear what the National Guard can do in Chicago, and so is the reason to bring them here in the first place. No, it's pretty obvious. It's to lower crime, and it is to kick illegal aliens out, and it is to stop the rampant murders and mayhem. So, but of course, Axios is a left-wing hack news rag, and so of course they are going to side with the Democrat Party.